I didn't think about. There we go. So we are started to record. So this session is being brought to you by OECM in partnership with Dell Technologies and ALP Advanced Learning Partnerships. OECM is a not-for-profit collaborative sourcing partner for Ontario's education sector, broader public sector, and other not-for-profit organizations as well. So this is one of many offerings to support educators in pursuit of the 3 ministry goals of achieving excellence, social and emotional learning, and equity and inclusion. So you can check out more sessions. So this is one that I'm doing, and I'm doing 5 in total. So I'm back tomorrow evening where I'll be doing a more advanced microbit session, and then next week as well. So for those of you who have the V2s, and if you're not sure, don't worry, I'll talk about the difference between V1 and V2. We'll be doing a session tomorrow, and then next week for the advanced session for those of you who have the V1 microbit. So I'm Anne Floyd, and I appreciate the opportunity to share with you all on behalf of ALP this evening and Dell Technologies. I love presenting about coding, and especially coding in the context of science and mathematics. So again, I'm here on behalf of ALP as a consultant, and you can see some of ALP's values here. You might want to check out their website. So it's Advanced Learning Partnerships. We'll try to share that link for you in the chat as well. And I can see that Dean's doing that. So thank you so much, Dean. So today we're going to be talking about why are we using the microbits, and why it's so great for education, why I love it. We'll talk about sensors, and because they're so prevalent around us, and I think it's important that students understand that sensors are collecting our data and how they do so. Then we'll do a few introductory programs that use the microbits built-in sessions. We'll also look at some curriculum connections for mostly science and technology in Ontario, but also the mathematics curriculum. Now, I know some of you are here today as beginners. Some of you are here as coordinators who are looking to support beginning teachers, teachers who have not used the microbit before, or maybe just have some limited experience. And so everyone is coming from sort of a different perspective and with different experience, but hopefully today it will be useful for all of you. You'll all find some benefit in this and see how I like to do things, and maybe you can use it in your own practice. So the microbit is made for educational purposes. That's one of the reasons why I love it so much. There are other tools that you can use that are wonderful as well, but the microbit itself, again, was made for educational purposes. And it was made to inspire students to learn how to code. But it keeps educators in mind, because we know there are barriers where teachers haven't done coding or a lot of coding. Also, technology, we have to make sure that it works as often as possible, or almost all the time. And the microbit is one of those tools that affords that for us. Now, it's not just coding. I love coding. That's sort of what I focus on my research for my PhD, and also what I love to do and share with educators all around Canada. And what we also do, though, besides just coding, is students are engaged with physical computing. So they're actually using the microbit to learn about how physical computing works. They can attach things to this. They can take in information from the environment, like we'll be doing this evening. They're also engaged in something called computational thinking, which you might have heard of, where we are thinking like a computer scientist. We're thinking logically. We're having to fix our errors and debugging. We're decomposing our programs into smaller, more manageable pieces. We're also trying to broaden participation in computer science. Cafe and Burke are researchers who discuss computational participation in one of their books. And they talk about how students can create with a greater purpose. So not just for creating for themselves, but to create to share with others. And so engaging in purposeful coding. And finally, I feel that when we're doing coding on the microbit, we're also engaged in something that Mitch Resnick, who is a lead developer of Scratch, he talks about Scratch, but I also see it with microbit. And you can use microbit with Scratch as well, by the way. But computational fluency is when we are using the computer or using coding as an outlet for students to create within. So it's quite powerful. What's great about the microbit is that there are several code editors. So we're going to be making use of the one called MakeCode today. It's a block-based code editor, but there are also many text-based code editors as well. And it does have that low floor, high ceiling. There's really no limit to what you can do with the microbit and coding with the microbit. So even if your students have used it before, or if they haven't used it at all, there's something for everyone. It's almost like a solution for differentiation. So the anatomy of the microbit, what is on the microbit? So if you're new to the microbit, I know some of you might have one with you this evening. Some of you are watching, and we'll try it out at another time, hopefully. But it does have a couple of buttons. So button A and button B that you can, when you code it, you can actually code it to make something happen when you press button A, when you press button B. Maybe you can make it play a song, or you can display a little heart on that screen of LEDs. So the LEDs, there's 25 LEDs, as you can see, and you can program each one of those. So you could say, light up the first one, or light up the very bottom right corner, or light up in the shape of a heart. So each one of those is programmable. The microbit also comes with some pins at the bottom. So we have some built-in sensors that we're going to be using today for this webinar, but you can also attach other things to this. So you can attach an alligator clip to a fan. You can turn on a fan with your microbit, or maybe turn on a motor to drive a car. There's like a little mini car. There are lots of different attachments that you can get for the microbit, and they're pretty inexpensive as well. But just the microbit alone, using it, like leveraging the sensors that come with it, is powerful. There's so much we can do with this. And you'll see some of that today. Maybe you'll see a different way of presenting it if you've already done the microbit. And also, if you want to join us tomorrow or next week, there are other sessions where I'll be doing more advanced ideas that you can do with your students with the microbit. So some of the sensors that are built in, now it depends if you have the V1 or V2, and I'll talk about that in a second, but it does, all of the microbits, whatever version you have a temperature sensor. So you can actually record the temperature, take in the temperature and display it. We also have on here a sort of a light sensor. It works like a light sensor. There's also a compass, so you can create a compass with this, and an accelerometer. So if you shake it or move it, and it actually does it in all the axes as well. So X, Y, and Z, if you want to get into some advanced coding. And the V2, the new one, also comes with a sound sensor as well. So there's a lot that come with this small little handheld device, which ranges around $30 right now. So the difference between V1 and V2, it's kind of hard to tell the difference. However, if you just look at the bottom, there's some rigids. You can see some rigids. You can see it a little bit more clearly on my screen there. So on the left, we have the V1s, which are just the older version, but are still great. It's flat on the bottom, versus the V2 has those ridges there. So that's how it's really easy to tell the difference. On the back also, the V2 does have a little label that says V2, and there are a couple other ways to distinguish between the two, but just looking at those ridges is how I do it when I have a whole bunch of microbits in front of me. So since the focus of this webinar is sensors, I thought I'd start by talking about what sensors are, what they're used for, and how they're all around us, constantly taking information about us and recording that and doing stuff with it. I think it's important that we build awareness for not just ourselves as educators, but our students. I was going to say not just our students, but ourselves, but either way, it's important that we build awareness. So let's compare to our own basic sensors. I think this is a good approach when you're trying to help students understand what sensors are. Let's start by talking about us as humans. What do we use to navigate the world around us? What do we use to sense things and then do something about it? So it helps to compare to our own senses. So I've got the basic senses listed there. And then I know now they talk about there's other senses, like balance or detecting tilt, or our ligaments detecting stretching. But just most young students are familiar with those 5 basic sensors. So senses, not sensors. We're about to talk about sensors and technology. So they give us perspective of the environment around us. They help us to interpret the world that we're living in. If one is diminished, there might be a way to enhance its effects, or maybe rely on a different sense. So they take information from the external environment and transmit it to our brains for processing. So the brain then directs the body to take a course of action. So we're taking in information about the environment, and then we're sending it to our brain and doing something with it. So that is, the basics of senses. Now, sensors and technology do pretty much the same thing. They take information from the environment and send it to computer for processing. An input could be like light, heat, motion, moisture, pressure, pH, anything. They've even tried to create sensors to detect or to be like human senses, like to do things like taste. So you can look that up if you want to know more. But there's literally a sensor for everything out there. So let's talk a little bit about sensors and their practical uses. I think this would be a great matching question, or it'd be great to give students a sensor that they're responsible for, finding out all of the practical uses that they can related to that particular sensor. And it might even be a sensor that they've never even heard of, or one that they are familiar with, but they didn't realize there are so many different applications of that particular sensor. So talking about, we'll go through each of these. I've got a few listed here, some common ones. So humidity. Humidity sensors are in museums and in art galleries because, if the moisture level in the air is too high or too low, it can affect the actual pieces that you have in the museum or the art gallery. Cigars have to be kept at a certain humidity level around in the air, in the room that it's in, that they're located in. Greenhouses, coffee roasting. So food literacy is a really big focus of the new science and technology curriculum here in Ontario in grades 1 to 8. So there are certain food processes that require a certain humidity in order to work properly. So let's have a look at motion sensors. So when I use a public washroom, they have dryers. So you walk up to the dryer and it turns on. That typically uses a motion sensor. Door openers often use motion sensors. Water taps, security. So in your backyard, you might have, we have an outdoor light that turns on when it detects motion. So it can be for safety or just to help you to walk around if it's dark out. We see, our lights. Well, I already mentioned the lights, but thinking about security. So security cameras will turn on if they detect motion. They're also used in smart bridges to determine, is the bridge safe? Is it possibly starting to fall apart? So we call these smart bridges because they have sensors in them, all different kinds of sensors, actually. Then there's the temperature sensors. So we have a temperature sensors. This might be more obvious, but to turn on your AC. So if the temperature goes below a certain value, then we turn on the heat. Also, if the temperature goes above a certain value, then we would turn on our air conditioner. So temperature sensors, so many practical uses for those. I'm sure you can come up with some. Ultrasonic sensors. So those are kind of the students really like those because they look like the eyes of a robot. And I find them really helpful for myself since we got a new vehicle after having a fairly old one. And now it can help me with parking, which has made a really big difference for me. So the ultrasonic sensors work just like bats use something called echolocation. So they send out a signal, send out a ping. It hits something, and then it will send that information back to the bat so it knows how far its prey is away. That is exactly how an ultrasonic sensor works as well. It has 2 circles on it, and it sends out information and then comes back to the computer, and then it tells you how far away things are. So it considers distances. Light sensors. So some people have a light sensor in their bathroom. When the light is low, turn it on. My street light goes on when it gets dark outside. They'll have light sensors on solar panels so that the solar panel will shift towards the light. We'll be making use of a light sensor today on our microbits. Finally, moisture sensors, which you can insert into soil. You might have heard that there's a lot of, or maybe you have one or have visited one, smart farms now, where farmers can just like look on maybe their smartphone and see the humidity level, or the moisture level rather, of their soil. And so they only water the soil when it's required. So they're saving water, saving resources. Also, I was just thinking of if in your basement, you might have a moisture sensor to determine if it needs to turn on a sump pump or to alert you that there's moisture in the basement. So now I'd like to talk quickly, I won't talk too fast. Hopefully I realize I like to talk fast, but I'm going to talk a little bit about the curriculum, and then we will be looking at examples that support the new science and technology curriculum and a little bit of math as well this evening. So we know that the new curriculum has those same 4 strands that it had before: life systems, matter and energy, structures and mechanisms, and earth and space systems. And it's actually more the same than it is different. However, there's this welcome new strand called STEM skills and connections, strand A. It's that umbrella strand that sits sort of atop, where the idea is that the components of this strand, skills and connections, will be integrated into all the other strands. And strand A also includes, the reason why we're here for this webinar, coding and emerging technologies. It also talks about some of the research processes, design processes, and engineering processes, and scientific investigation processes and communication. But 2 of the specific expectations include coding and emerging technologies. So I just summarized those for grades 4, 5, and 6. So the focus of this webinar is on 4, 5, and 6. However, I do think this will be helpful for those of you who are new to the microbit for grade 7 and 8. And plus, many students are new to the microbit. So these are great applications for you to try out with your students in grades 4 to 8 and even grade 9. So A2.1 talks about coding in investigations and modeling concepts. So we will be I'll share some examples of how you can use the microbit in investigations to collect data and then do something with it. For modeling concepts, maybe you might use like Scratch or Python or links to create an animation, and then that can be like a simulation of an actual scientific phenomenon or action, something happening. We can also model concepts using the microbit a little bit, and I'll show you some examples today. A2.2 talks about impacts of emerging technology. So we are going to be using the microbit to collect data about the surrounding environment. Students are going to start becoming a little bit more aware, if they weren't already, about all the devices around them, collecting their data and doing something with it. So that's also, I think, a focus of today's webinar. It is a focus of today's webinar. So in grade 4, 5, and 6, and actually from grades 1 to 8, there's this continuum of skills that they're also to be focusing on as students are learning and as you're assessing students' work. So in grade 4, we're focusing on output, and I will show you what that means today. We'll see every example will have some form of output. In grade 5, they focus on storing and processing data. So you'll see some examples of that today as well. And then finally in grade 6, obtaining input. So because we're working with sensors, every application today can be considered obtaining input. We are obtaining input from the environment around us. So although those are the actual specific expectations, we talk about coding, we talk about emerging technology, we are supposed to be doing all of that in connection with other strands. I just want to make a note that I really don't think it's necessary to do coding in every strand. I think that would be a little bit excessive and a little bit too much. And I feel that sometimes when we force coding into everything, it becomes unauthentic. If we just kind of put it in everywhere. So I think it's great to try and choose, maybe one or maybe two strands this year of where it seems to fit in the best, where it just makes sense. And I think you'll see some examples of that today. So once or twice per school year, if you can have the computers for a few days each time, that would be great. But it's just important to make those authentic connections. We don't want coding and emerging tech to be something students don't enjoy, because it is just amazing what students can do with it. And we want them to enjoy what they're doing. And also it needs to be purposeful. So since we're talking about building awareness of how the technological world around us works, I thought I would just talk a little bit, and because this is so related to the curriculum expectations, about input, processing, and output. So computers work in this way. We give it information, we do something with it, and then we output stuff. So with a computer, if you're typing on your keyboard, you are giving it input. Or if you're talking into your computer, you're giving it input. And so it can process, and then it can process it and do something with it. With sensors, we're collecting input for them from the surrounding environment. We're collecting light, temperature, sound today. We're also collecting information about whether we shake the microbit. So that's all examples. Those are all examples of input. Devices around us, any sort of microcontrollers or something that is automated, they also work on this concept. They take an input, they process it with a little mini computer, and then they output some sort of action. So I'm just going to, so examples of output, by the way, would be like if you're on a computer, your monitor, your printer, sound coming out of your computer. So we're going to be seeing both sound or hearing sound, seeing output displayed on the microbit as well for this webinar. Now you might have noticed on the curriculum, it was actually grade 4 was output, grade 5 was processing, and grade 6 was input. It might seem backwards, but the reason it makes sense that they've done it this way, because output is actually a little bit easier to do. You'll see that you can do a really basic application and display output. It also works so well in grade 4 because we have the light and sound unit. So you're outputting sound, outputting light information. So that's why I think grade 4 works perfect for output. Processing in grade 5, so doing something with that information, making a decision about the information, maybe doing a calculation makes sense, because in grade 5 in mathematics, students are using something called conditional statements, which you'll see an example of in a bit. And they also tend to use variables when we're doing that. So it works well with grade 5 and aligns nicely with the math curriculum as well. Finally, in grade 6, input, and we're going to be doing that today, but it's a little bit more advanced, and you'll see some examples today and then even more advanced examples tomorrow if you join us, and next week as well. So that's kind of an explanation of the continuum of skills that we're doing in grades 4, 5, and 6. And all of those are important also for grades 7 and 8 as well. So some of you might be kind of coding along during this webinar. I would suggest that you watch the demonstrations, watch me do it, and then rewatch the webinar. If you have the chance, just fast forward to this part and then participate in that way. But you're also welcome, of course, to code along. And then you can, if you want to type questions in the chat and people can support one another. Otherwise, I can answer any questions troubleshooting later on. So we're going to start. I have students use MakeCode.com, and I suggest using Google Chrome or Microsoft Edge, because when we connect to the microbit, when we're collecting data, it works better in those web browsers. Okay, so I'm going to be going there in a second as well. So the first application we're going to use is going to make use of the accelerometer sensor. It's more of an introductory application, more for fun, but it does include some output, and we are using the accelerometer sensor. So I always like to do a different introductory application every time I do a webinar or whenever I visit classrooms. So for this one, we're going to make it so the microbit will have a little smile on it. And then when we shake that thing, it will have a surprised look. I like to think of this as, or I was actually, I guess, more inspired by the Hatchimal. So if any of you have kids or nieces or nephews who have a Hatchimal, you will know what I'm talking about. So we have one, and we have a 1-year-old now who's borrowing her older brother's Hatchimal, and she loves to shake it, and it gets really angry when you shake it. It doesn't like that. So that's kind of what we're doing here. We're making it so our microbit will shake and do something. So I'm going to code live to demonstrate this with you. So when you get to, I'm just going to go back. So you're probably on this page. When you come to makecode.com, you can click on, you actually have to click on the microbit first, and then you can click on new project. So click on the microbit and then click on new project. And I'm going to call this intro. You can see that all the projects I've been working on are listed here. And so they're stored on your browser. So whatever browser you open up, you'll see all of those projects and you can click on them. So if you're using the same computer, you'll see that. So I'm just going to click on create to open a new project. Now, since this is a beginning session, I just want to go over some of the basics, but I do feel like the best way to learn the microbit and MakeCode is to just engage with it. So just get students coding as soon as possible. But I will mention there are some drawers here that you can see, and each of those drawers has a purpose and have a number of blocks in them. And they're also color coordinated. For those who don't have color blindness, then those colors are also useful as well. So today we're going to be using this start block. So I'm going to make my code bigger. On the bottom right-hand side, you can see my screen. It's making it a little bit bigger there. Okay, so we're going to make it so when the program starts, so as soon as we power up our microbit, it's going to have a little smile up there. Okay, so I'm going to go to basic, and then I'm going to show icon. So I went under basic, show icon, and then in the pull down menu, I had a little happy face. So that as soon as our microbit is powered on, the happy face will appear. And you can see that in my simulator here, there's a happy face there, because everything you try when you're coding on here, you can try it out on your simulator. Now, when you start to use sensors, it's a little bit more challenging to test it out on here, but I'll show you how you can do that today. The next thing we're going to do is get rid of this forever block. We don't need it for this particular application. Forever means it's going to constantly be doing something. We just want our microbit to do something when we shake it. So when I shake it, something will happen. So I'm going to get rid of that. You can either get rid of it by dropping it into the trash can, or you can right click and delete. So I just got rid of that block. What I'd like to do is use a shake block, which is under input. So we're going to go under input and grab the on shake block. So under input, I'll grab that on shake block, and everything I put inside of this on shake block that I got from input, I'm going to be, it will do when I shake it. So it's very simple. I'm just adding 3 blocks to this program, or to this part of the program. So under basic, I'm going to grab the show icon block. And when I shake it, I want it to do a surprise look. So in the pull down menu, I will look for surprise. It's actually called surprise. I didn't realize that. So I'm going to click on the surprise, and there we go. So it now has the surprise icon showing up. But I don't want it to stay there. So if I just shake it, the first time I shake it, the surprise will just stay there and won't go away unless I program it to go away. So we'll leave the surprise look up there for about 1 second, and then we'll switch it back to the happy face so that we can keep shaking it and make it appear again and again and again. Otherwise, it will just appear now, and then that's the end of the program. So we want to allow that to happen. So under basic, we can scroll down to the pause block. So I went to basic, pause, and then I snap it into place, kind of like Lego. Just snap it in. And then I'm going to change it to 1 second, which is 1000 milliseconds. So it will stay up. So when I shake it, it will pause for a second, and then we need it to do something else. So what I'd like it to do, under basic, I'm going to throw my happy face back in again. So we can test this out on the simulator. So I've got, when it starts out, you can see the smiley face. When I shake the microbit, now I can't shake my computer, but I can shake the simulator or just click on this little white dot there, and you'll see, did you see the surprise look appears for 1 second, and then it just over 1 second, and then it goes back to the happy face. So that is our first program, our first introductory program. Students can choose other animations that they'd like to do. So they're outputting information to the user who's using the microbit. I'm going to go ahead and show you how to pair the microbit. Now, this might be a little bit tricky. It doesn't matter how many times I do this with a class with teachers in professional development. I find that it doesn't always go perfectly. So you just have to accept that the first time you connect the microbit, and maybe the second and third time, it will be a little bit chaotic. You'll probably be running around helping everybody. But what I usually do, and I tell the students this at the beginning, as soon as one person is successfully connects to their microbit or manages to do that, then the next thing they do is help somebody else. So it's kind of like that domino effect. There's no cheating in coding. Always get students to help each other out as much as they can. You will see that students won't just give the answer. They just naturally support everyone with trying to understand it.
Can I just interject for a second?
Yes, no problem.
We have a couple of questions in the chat around the same practical tip type information around accounts with MakeCode. Is there a way to do accounts in a classroom environment, especially when they're sharing computer carts between classes? Any strategies there you can share?
Right. So there are a couple strategies. What you can do, I believe, I haven't checked it out recently because I don't use this typically because I'm visiting classrooms, usually just one-offs. However, if you check out MakeCode Classroom, I believe that they do have a classroom, and someone can chime in if they've been using that in the chat. So that's quite useful because you can see students coding live on there. What I would suggest you do with students is there's a way to share their code, and then they just keep a working document of all of their applications. So if they're sharing carts and they're not able to log into their account on there, because if you log into your own account and you have a web browser associated with that account, like a Google Classroom or Google, for example, it will be on there, it should be on there, all of their applications. Thank you. Thank you, Katina. So she shared the classroom option for you as educators to use. The other thing that you might do, so this is what I encourage people to do, and this is how I do it. You can save it onto your hard drive if you want by clicking on the save button on the bottom, but I tend to use this share button. So I'll just click on that again to show you. So on the top right-hand corner, it says publish. So I'm going to publish that. Then I can click publish to share. And then I've got a link. So this is how I save all of my programs, because sometimes I might be jumping on someone else's computer. I just want to have all of these with me. So I just start a document and I label and I indicate, you'll actually see this today, because I will be sharing, by the way, a document with all of the screen prints of the code today. So when you click on copy link, you can then just paste that in your browser and it will open up. And so then you have that's how I keep track of all of my programs that I make, as well as using that browser. So hopefully that's helpful. All right, so we're going to do the pairing now. So as I said, this is a little bit tricky, but hopefully that will work out for you. Okay, so I'm going to click on this 3 dots on the bottom. So I usually show it once and then I show it again, and then I run around and help everybody because there are multiple steps, but I think it's good to go through all the steps quickly and then a little bit slowly, and then watch and help everybody out with it. So when we click on the 3 dots on the bottom, and I'm already connected. I thought I disconnected. I'll just quickly disconnect so that you can see this process. There we go. Okay. I'll make my code bigger again. So I'm going to click on the 3 dots, and then I'm going to connect device. So 3 dots, connect device. Then you click on next and next. This white window comes up, this white dialog box. There's the BBC microbit. And then you click on connect. And then done. At the bottom left-hand side, you can see something flashing there. If it takes a little bit too long, a trick that I've learned is to just like reload the screen. So I might have to do that. There you go. And sometimes it's connected and sometimes I just have to do it again. Oops, it's disconnecting. So I think I'm good there now. You'll know that it's working because the back of your microbit will flash. And the first time you do this, it usually takes a little bit longer. So I'll walk you through those steps one more time, and then we'll move on to the next application. Okay. So now when I shake my microbit, you can see the surprised face, and then it goes back to the happy face. So every time I shake it, it goes to the surprise face and then the happy face once again. I'm going to go back to my slides. So I'll just show you that again. I've got a video here. So click on the 3 dots, connect device, and then next, and then there's that white window at the top left-hand corner. Click on BBC microbit, click on connect. You can find this online. There are lots of resources for how to do that. For those of you who have used the microbit before and haven't used it in a couple of years, you can do it the old school way where you would like click and drag something over to a folder. However, if you're using like sensors and you're going to be collecting data, and especially if you get into more advanced features of the microbit, you want to do it that way that I just showed you, where you pair. And it's actually easier because now all I have to do is click download every time I do something and it will reflect on the microbit. So it's only the first time when you go to connect, when you're making multiple programs, that you have to go through all of those steps, because then it's connected and it's good to go. Like you even saw I was connected from working with it earlier today at first. Okay, so you can see examples of output. I want to continue on here so that we get through some more applications. So you can see some output on my screen there, or on the microbit. That is output. So that's an example of what the students need to do in grade 4. They're also taking an input with that on Shake, but the focus would be on output. So let's take a look at some examples now in grade 4 for light and sound. These, again, can be used in other grades as well, but I just wanted to share some like actual applications that you might do with grade 4 students. So taking a look at the light meter now. So this here is a program that will display the light level on the microbit. So I'll make that pretty quickly. I'm going to go a little bit faster now. So if you want to code along, again, I recommend watching the recording and looking through and fast forwarding to this part, or I'll share with you a document with all of the applications so that you can actually just like recreate them by looking at the blocks of code. But I'm going to walk you through this one. Oops, I have my old program on there. There we go. So I'm going to click on new project and I'll call this the light sensor. And I'm going to get rid of my on start block and I'm going to keep the forever block. So again, I'm going a little bit faster here, but again, you can go ahead and try these out afterwards. So I'm going to click on LED and then I'm going to click on the plot bar graph. And if I drop that inside of the forever block, I'm then going to take in the light level. So light is an input. We're inputting information into our microbit. So I'm going to click on input. And then I'm going to scroll down to light level and snap that inside because I'm going to plot a bar graph of the light level. So again, I went to input, scroll down to light level, and then I snap that into place. Light and sound go from 0 to 255. It's a relative value on the microbit. So if they're getting readings of 255, then you know it's really bright. If they're getting readings of like 20 or 30, then it's not very bright in the room. So it's a relative measurement. Everyone always asks me about units, but for the microbit, it's all relative. So 0 to 255. There is a reason why there's 256 different values. That's sort of like a computer science explanation, but I'm just going to focus on or let you know that the number goes up to 255. So therefore, it's sort of like a proportion. If it's half of 255, so if it's kind of bright and kind of dark in between, then only half of the LEDs will light up, as you can see. So it starts at the bottom and we see about just over half of the LEDs lighting up. So this is a simulator. So I can actually simulate having no light by just adjusting this. So you notice as soon as I brought the light level in, I can change that value. So when it's at 0, only one LED lights up. When it's so super bright, all of the LEDs will light up. So that's a really quick light sensor that students can try out. So again, we have output. We're outputting information to the user on that grid. And we also have input now. So there's the grade 6 connection. So we're taking an input in the form of light level. For this next one here, we've got the audio light meter. So it will do the same thing. It's taking in the light level, but now it's setting, this is a little bit more advanced, but I wanted to show you because it's kind of fun, where it will actually play 2 notes and it will play them really quickly if it's really bright and much slower if it's not so bright. So I'm just going to take you to some code that I've already created. So if I have that link ready, so if you do go to a link that you've already created, then you just click on the little edit button and it will take it into MakeCode for you. So then if I download that onto my microbit, I'm going to show you that. I might have to download it again. Hold on. Sometimes it does this. So I'm holding it near a light right now. So I think you can hear the sound. It's going faster because it's at the light, sort of like Jaws. That was my intention with those 2 notes. And then if I hold it away from there, see, it slows down. Now I got to unplug it because you'll hear that otherwise. So I just wanted to show you the potential of incorporating a speaker. So this is a V2, so it has a built-in speaker. There is a way to add a speaker, like if you have a headset or anything, or a mini speaker to the V1s. But the point is, it's outputting information in the form of sound based on the input, which is light. So I got all of those blocks from the music drawer, and again, they're color coordinated. So this one here, I'm just showing you on my presentation. It's the exact same as the light sensor, but now it's a sound sensor. So you'll see you'll hear rather, if it's really loud in your classroom, all of the LEDs will light up. If it's quieter, then only some of the LEDs will light up. I was at a professional development session recently, and they thought, oh, we could put this in our classroom during like reading time or when they're supposed to be working independently as a sound meter. So you don't have to say anything. You just, oh, let's look at our sound meter there. It's a little bit full right now. So we can kind of it's just an application of the sound sensor. So moving into a few temperature ideas before we wrap up. So what you can do is display the light and temperature on our microbits just by, and remember when we shook the microbit and did something, you can do the same thing by pressing button A or pressing button B. So with this code here, if I press button A on my microbit, a number will go across the screen. And as you will recall, the number will be between 0 and 255. So if it's like 0 or 1, we have very low level of light. If it's higher, then you have higher levels of light. If I press button B here, you'll see that it will display the temperature. The temperature is in degrees Celsius for the microbit. So it is in a unit that is familiar to students. What you can do is, so I just want to show again, the output is in the form of the numbers going across the screen. The input is light and temperature. Students can go around and collect data about different rooms, different areas of the classroom. They can go outside. They can determine, perhaps where the best place is to grow some seeds, full light, temperature. They can take this value throughout the day. They can go and graph this value. I think a bar graph would be a good way to collect data about different classrooms or different rooms or different areas. They can connect this to human health and body systems as well. We know that too high of temperatures isn't a great learning environment. In space, it does talk about climate change. However, it also talks about ideal conditions in space. So they're constantly monitoring the amount of their temperature especially, but they're constantly monitoring things like temperature in the International Space Station. So that's an example of, and it does talk about that in the expectations in grade 6. So what is the optimal living conditions for astronauts in space? So there's a Pretty basic example, but powerful as well. Students can collect data themselves with something that they coded. Here's a bit more advanced now, where we're taking in temperature and we're actually making a decision about it. We're processing that information with a conditional statement. So conditional statements, once again, are in mathematics in grade 5 in Ontario. But what this will do is it's taking the temperature every second, just constantly on the microbit. And on your microbit, an unhappy face will appear if it's too hot. So if it's greater than or equal to 25, an unhappy face will appear. If it's a reasonable temperature, less than 25, now this is assuming it's summertime, it will be a happy face. So you're giving information to the user. We've got processing there, and we also have some output with the displaying of the happy face and unhappy face. And we're also taking an input in the form of temperature. Maybe you want to have students know when to wear shorts or pants. So that's my attempt at drawing shorts or pants on the microbit. But just so you see, there's different ways that you can output information to the user with those LEDs. So you just grab that show LED block and students can make their own little animations. So we've got about 9 minutes left. I'd like to do 2 more applications and then just connect a little bit more to curriculum before we finish off. Oh, thank you. And Katina gave me a little tip there. Thanks. So automation. This program here, I'm going to show you what you might do with your students, because it's a lot of code when you don't have a lot of time in your classrooms, especially with grade 4. But I really like it because it's taking in, so what this program does is it's an automated nightlight. It will take in light from the surrounding environment, and it will shine all the LEDs, turn on all the LEDs if it's dark. So if it's dark, automatically the LEDs will come up because it's automated. We don't have to press any buttons. It just turns on when the light is dark. When it's bright, we'll see one little LED on the corner so that you know it's working. So if I go to this link, and I will share this link on a document in a moment so that you have everything with you. So again, we'll just click on edit when you get to the link. And so what I do is have students figure out what number they have to enter in there for the conditional statement, because it varies depending on what room you're in, or if you're outdoors or indoors and things like that. So that number is key for making this program work. So if it's less than a certain amount, then we want to turn on the LEDs, light it up just like an automated nightlight would. Okay, so moving on to our last example that you might consider doing with your students. So this works really well in grade 5 for forces acting on structures, and in grade 6 for the flight and actually the space strand as well. And I'll tell you why in a moment. But it's the microbit egg drop. So I'll show you the code. And again, I'll give you the screen print of the code so you can look where to find it. This would be the on shake block here, but it's you just change it in the pull down menu to on 8Gs. So many of you have done the egg drop with your students, where they have to design some sort of holder for the egg, and then everybody goes to like a staircase or somewhere high and drops it and checks it, opens it up to check if the egg is broken or not. Well, I feel like we're wasting a lot of eggs doing that. So instead of doing that, you can use a microbit so that you can test this and iterate your whatever you build, the structure, over and over again, and then try it with the real actual egg after you've perfected your, I don't want to use perfected, but tested and retested your structure. So one thing to keep in mind, it's actually force that breaks the egg. However, in this case, if the egg experiences 8Gs of acceleration, so that's 8 times the gravity pulling on it, then we're pretty certain the egg will break. So this allows your students to test and retest it. So you can just put the microbit into the package that they make. Some will use a parachute, some will use like insulation and other materials, but whatever they use, maybe they'll use a combination of those things. So if we're starting to think about parachutes, then we can talk about flight. And then also when astronauts return back to Earth, they have to land safely in like one certain spot. So that's another connection to space as well, keeping our astronauts safe. And then for grade 5, forces acting on structures, Students are expected to describe ways in which protective equipment helps to protect humans from potentially harmful effects of forces. So maybe they're designing a helmet to contain the egg or the microbit egg. So there's a little pretty simple program for you to try out. The A button clears the screen. So as long as there's nothing on the screen, it means that the egg has not dropped. And you can change that to a happy face instead. But as soon as the egg drops, or as soon as, sorry, the microbit drops, they'll quickly open up their little package. And if there's an unhappy face, they weren't successful. So they need to go and iterate and fix their project. So let's just wrap this up, and then I'll give you a couple minutes to complete the survey, or allow for you to have some time to do that. So just looking back what we covered a lot. I will share with you the document with all of the screen prints in a moment. But we did learn how you can produce output. You know, when we have the unhappy face or the smiley face or the surprised face, or we had sound coming out of the microbit in the form of jaws, we were producing output. So grade 4. But we also did that in connection with other strands. In grade 5, we looked at storing and processing data. If you recall, for the temperature application, we had the conditional statements. We were processing, we were using a greater than or less than sign. And then in grade 6, the whole webinar that we just did, we were obtaining input the whole time with all of those applications. And again, we were doing that in connection with other strands. I just wanted to share this because it seems to be popular where we're comparing math and science and technology in Ontario. So you can snap a picture of that if you'd like. So in grade 4, we're looking at nested events, producing output in science and technology. Grade 5, conditional statements, storing and processing data, 2 things that are actually closely linked and work well together. And then in grade 6, we're just looking at making our code more efficient. You'll find that students and teachers and anyone who's not experienced at coding will do like a lot of code to do one simple task. And then they'll realize after, oh, I could have just used that block. Or so that's making our code more efficient. And then in science and technology, obtaining input from the world, or from everywhere around us, the environment around us. So here's the link to our all of the applications that I shared with you on this webinar. So there'll be screen prints of all the code. There's also a link to that Nightlight application, so you can have your students alter the code if you'd like. I don't think you always have to start from scratch. I think altering code is also really great for students to do and try and predict what will happen. So I think that's being posted into the chat. I'll just have that up now as well. Perfect. Oh, I'll give permission. Thank you for that. Actually, I will do that right away. And while I'm doing that, you can see there are also a couple of links in here. So if you complete the survey, we really appreciate it. The survey gives us feedback and also gives us, my watch is telling me that you all want permission to get that. So let me just grab that. I can hear that I'm getting emails requesting permission. So let me just share that. Sorry about that. You'd think I would know to do that by now. Anyone with the link, there we go. So that should work for you now. I think I have okay, here we go. So we're back to the link. You'll see the link posted in the chat. Once again, the survey, it really helps us out if you complete that survey, because you know, that validates why we're doing these. So if you want to see more content like this, complete the survey, give us feedback. And plus, this really helps me as a presenter, and I'm sure you can relate if you want to get feedback so that you can improve and be better. Finally, you can see webinars or other webinars. So today, we saw one. There was one that was already earlier, and then we've got, I think there's like 8 or 9 more, and I've got 5 in total. So I'd love to see you. Yeah, so there's not another webinar right after this, but I'm happy to stay on if you have any questions for a couple of minutes before I run off and hang out with my 1-year-old before bed. So I'm happy to stay on here for a few minutes. Thanks so much for joining, everyone. Hopefully got all of those links, and hopefully this was useful to you. Be sure to tweet and share so that your colleagues might join us on some of the other webinars.
Lisa, I think one of the folks in the chat was asking if you're doing one for grade 7 and 8 science. or is there a dedicated webinar specifically for middle school?
Oh, thanks, Katina. So we will be doing some advanced stuff tomorrow. So tomorrow at 4 p.m. There's another webinar, and that one's on advanced sensors with the microbit for the V2. So we will be doing some stuff that works really well in grades 6, 7, 8, and 9 as well, actually. So if you have any high school colleagues who are teaching high school, please encourage them to join us for that. There's unlimited potential with that, where we're collecting live data that we can export into a spreadsheet, Excel or Google Sheets, and we can analyze the data there. A similar webinar will be next week. However, in that webinar, we're focusing on using the V1 or the V2. So if you only have access to V1s or the V2s, it doesn't matter. We'll do something similar where we're collecting data from a remote microbit. Again, it's a little bit more advanced, and we'll be collecting live data, and it's really powerful. So highly recommend joining for that if you can make it. I know everyone is obviously so busy. I see so many familiar names. It's so great to see you all. Thank you so much for joining. I like to see representation from my own children's school too. So thanks, Bobby. I
Hi,
always
Lisa, it's
appreciate.
Mike. Can I just ask you a quick question?
Yeah, hi, Mike.
Hi, it's wonderful to see you again, by the way. I
You
just
too.
wanted to clarify something quickly, and you might have referred to it about tomorrow's session, but when you're talking about grade 5 science curriculum and how it's analyzing data to inform a decision, and I link that to the grade 8 math curriculum where it talks about storing, processing, analyzing data. I'm getting a little bit confused personally with the two different grade levels and what the similarities and differences are.
Okay, so I can you just repeat the last part? So I heard you talk about the grade 8 curriculum, how like the data on there will be super useful for the mathematics curriculum. And I'll just talk a little bit, and then you can ask another question if I haven't made it clear or clearly answered your question. So the science part will be, we're collecting data for the purpose of science investigations, but you could connect this to your mathematics curriculum as well. So it helps if the teachers are teaching both the math and the science, because they can collect all the data and then analyze it and use it in the form of like for their math class as well. Do you want to just kind of talk a little bit more about your question to make sure I've answered it properly, Mike?
Yeah, no, I guess it's just the similarity in the vocabulary, and it's two different grade levels. So grade 5 science, grade 8 math, where they both talk about data analysis basically.
Okay, so do you have the grade 5 curriculum in front of you right now? Could you read me
Well, no, I was
Okay.
thinking the grade 5 science expectation that you had already just shared.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, grade 5 science versus grade 8 math, but yet it's still talking about data analysis within both.
Okay. So I have to double check the use of the term data analysis, but it's so in grade 5 in the science and technology curriculum, they're just making a decision about the data. So using a conditional statement basically, or an if-then statement, or doing a calculation on some sort of data that you've imported. I think the grade 8 expectation is a little bit more advanced, where you're actually diving a little deeper into the data. And so, for example, tomorrow we'll be collecting a whole bunch of data at once. Whereas in grade 5, you could just say, well, with that temperature, so let me I think I'm still sharing my screen. Yep. So this one here, we're taking in data and then we're processing it and doing something with it in order to produce an outcome. Whereas I see the grade 8 expectation, and I will go back and reread that grade 5 expectation, science and technology, Mike, and then email you if I feel like I could maybe add to this answer. But with the grade 8, I see that as being a little bit more advanced, where we're collecting not just like one bit of data, like you could say this is kind of grade 8, but I think collecting ongoing data, live data, like hundreds of data points, thousands of data points, and then analyzing it in that way, and then making decisions based on that. But I will go back and read that grade 5 expectation, because I don't have the exact wording memorized.
That alone is quite helpful. So thank you for that.
Okay, awesome. Okay, great to see you, Eleanor, on here. I see so many familiar faces. So names. Any other questions that I can take a few minutes to answer? I'm happy to do so.
Going once, going twice. Okay, so Lisa can call it an evening.
And I do see a question, if it's okay, Katina, I'll just answer
Absolutely.
about advanced webinars too hard for grade 4. So I would suggest that you take a peek in, because I am planning on doing this with a grade 4 class in a couple of weeks. And I do like, because it's not a ton of code that we're using, you can do this in grade 4. I do think it's great to start off with these basic applications though. And then if you have the time, if you have the technology that long in your classroom, I know sometimes we're sharing, then definitely try out the advanced one where we're actually collecting data, especially the beginning part of the webinar. So maybe next week's beginning part of the webinar, I'll just show you really quickly how to collect data. It's not that advanced to do so. And the students are kind of blown away, like, whoa, where like they can see the graph immediately without even having to do that much to it. And I see another question, maybe for next week, we can do. So Arduino sensors are awesome. I love Arduino. I do find when I work and go to different schools that there's some barriers that we hit with, like we either have to download the software or it doesn't connect well with certain applications on the Chromebook. So we have like certain issues with the Arduino, but I do love the Arduino. So I do it with my, I work with it with my pre-service teachers at the Faculty of Education. All right. Thanks so much again for joining. Thanks so much to Dell Technologies, ALP, and OECM for affording us this opportunity to share, to connect with one another, and to learn more about coding for our use in our classrooms. Really appreciate it.
And thank you, Lisa. And we'll be back this week for some more fun. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening.
Thanks. Always appreciate your support, Maureen.